Hello and welcome to the ISM New Jersey webinar series. My name is Kathy Perna and I'm the Executive Director for the ISM New Jersey chapter. I would like to welcome all of our attendees from the various locations around the US. Please be sure to ask questions during the presentation using the chat or Q&A tab, and our speaker will answer those questions at the end of the presentation. This program will be available on demand on our website. So let's get started. Molly Louthan, who is the North American lead for the Stata Flux based in Chicago with over 15 years of experience, working directly with large Fortune 500 organizations. She brings a broad range of experience and skills, including procurement strategy, development, and execution, and supplier relationship management strategy, development, and execution, communication and stakeholder engagement strategy, category management, strategic sourcing, emerging market sourcing, and local procurement programs. Her first exposure to the procurement and supply chain function was as a consultant with trading partners, managing RFPs through e-auctions. She moved into a business development role in managing high-level relationships with her clients and providing procurement and technology strategy. Outside of procurement transformation, she started advancing women executives in Chicago, coaching over 200 leaders and delivering workshops to Fortune 500 organizations, looking to increase the percentage of women executives. Please welcome Molly.
Thank you so much, Kathy. I appreciate that introduction. And thank you to everybody that has joined today. I am Molly Louthan. I'm the Managing Director for Stata Flux. And we're going to talk today about supplier management trends. And I think one of the things that have come out of the COVID pandemic is a look at highlighting the fact that our suppliers and how we manage our suppliers is extremely important. And so we've been doing research into supplier management trends for the last 12 years. And we are once again doing our research that you all are able to participate in and receive a free benchmark that this data is based on every year. So at the end, I'll be able to show you all how to go and participate in the research, and then also share it with Kathy to send out as a follow-up along with this presentation. But I would like to say, if you do have any questions throughout the presentation, please send them in via the chat so that Kathy can ask them. This really is supposed to be as beneficial for you all as possible. So if we can interact just like we were in person, and feel free to send in questions and we'll be able to get them covered. So thank you once again for joining, and I'll go ahead and start running us through. As Kathy had alluded to, I am the Managing Director for Stata Flux. We focus on supplier management. So we started the organization 15 years ago when supplier management was just really starting to pick up traction. And a lot of people were focused on sourcing and driving costs down. But this idea of how do we partner better with our suppliers to drive innovation and drive growth, that's really the theme of where we started Stata Flux. And so that's what we focus on. We do have a consulting practice. We have accredited training that you're able to take on supplier management. And then we also have developed our own technology that is specific to supplier management. So if you have any questions afterwards on anything Stata Flux does, feel free to reach out to me either directly via email, or I'm really easy to find on LinkedIn, and I'd love to have you all be a part of my network. So jumping into some of the content, we are going to be using polls today. So Kathy, if you can go ahead and launch the first poll, which is a question around pandemic risk and how prepared this audience was for what happened. So does your organization include pandemic risk in your risk management scenarios and plans? So if you can go ahead and respond This is an interesting stat that we have from our research that I'll be able to show you on the next slide about how prepared we were in procurement for this pandemic. So Kathy, once you get enough results, if you can share them with all of us, that would be great. All right, the results are in. Okay, so 31% of you said that you did have a plan. 58 of you said you don't, and 11% said not applicable. So those numbers are actually higher than what we have from our research. So from our 2019 research, one of the questions we've been asking for the last 12 years, that's in our research every year, is do you include pandemic risk in your risk management strategy for supplier management? So we had listed this as one of the possible things to disrupt the supply chain. And from our responses from last year, only 7% of organizations had included pandemic risk in their risk management scenarios and planning. So when this pandemic hit, we saw this research and we knew going into this that this was going to be a tough time for a lot of global organizations because we hadn't prepared for this scenario with our suppliers. We might have prepared for it internally with how we need to manage it as a company, but figuring out how do we manage pandemic risk with our suppliers wasn't necessarily built in, and there wasn't a lot of planning and strategy around that. Furthermore, another interesting statistic that we have is from the research is 45% of respondents have effective risk management in place for up to 50% of their key suppliers. So even just risk management in general doesn't have a robust strategy for suppliers. And most of the people that are participating in this survey are large global Fortune 500 companies, so large organizations that definitely have a gap, not only in pandemic risk, but also in risk in general, making sure that they have the right amount of strategy in place for when we have situations like this come up. And then the other one, which I always like to talk about is around innovation. So right now, a lot of you might be scrambling to figure out how do we just get the products and services that we needed when we need them. But this is also a great time to think about how do we innovate with our suppliers and what is our innovation process internally. And from our research, only 38% of organizations have an effective innovation process built in with their suppliers. And so out of this crisis, a lot of new ideas are going to start emerging. And what's going to be key is figuring out how do you capture these new ideas that are going to be coming through from your suppliers in order to execute on them for the future. And those of us who are able to pivot and innovate with our suppliers as quickly as possible are the ones that are going to come out of this pandemic the strongest, as well as creating new ideas that we might have never thought of before that are going to help drive our company forward and be more cost effective and efficient and find ways to grow revenue. So I can pause there, Kathy, see if there's any questions that have come in thus far, or feel free to send in a question now if you have anything on some of these high-level statistics from our research.
One question was, who are your customers?
Okay, yeah, so our customers are mostly global Fortune 500 size organizations. So we have offices in London and Australia, as well as Chicago. So a lot of the clients that we're working with are global multinational organizations with complex supply chains. And therefore, a lot of the people that complete this survey are in that same bucket as well. So Here in the US, we do a lot of work with FMCG, oil and gas, as well as utilities. In London, we do a lot of work with the financial services organizations, but it's really a mixed bag, as you'll see later from our industry results of our survey, that there isn't an industry that stands out for supplier management. What we tend to see is pockets of excellence with specific companies that have really focused on making supplier management a pillar of their procurement organization and a pillar of how they do business. So taking supplier management out of just being seen as something that procurement does and embedding it into the business as everyday practice of, this is how we partner with our suppliers, this is our way that we innovate, this is how we manage risk, because a lot of your largest suppliers will be managed by your business partners, and making sure that they're well educated on that is key. So this is some of the things that we've seen from the past couple of months, is the organizations that have strong business continuity plans ended up having less severe disruptions within their supply chain. So basically, even if you're either one of these groups of people that had a really strong business continuity plan that include pandemic risk and had a lot of strategy on how to deal with the situation, and you're in bucket number one, fantastic. There's still probably some things that you can learn from what happened. And the majority of us that don't have the business continuity plans in place, let's use this as a learning experience to be able to start to put in some of this structure and some of these backup plans so that when something like this comes around again, we will be better prepared and we'll have an easier time reacting to this. So I don't know when the COVID pandemic will be over. There might be a second wave coming this winter. So, you know, being prepared for it now while things are starting to get back to normal, so that if it does happen again, and then also thinking about the other risks that you could be looking at within your supply chain as well, and building out more than just pandemic risk within your business continuity plans. So to jump into some of the big trends for supplier management, I'd like to set the stage with talking about what is SRM. And a lot of our clients go round and round and round on even just defining what is supplier relationship management. So feel free to use this definition if you are ever talking internally or externally, trying to get people on the same page about what supplier relationship management means, or tweak it for what's right for your organization. But for us, every word is very important in this. And so we've highlighted why we've chosen those words as well, so that people really sink into what makes supplier relationship management. So a discipline of working collaboratively with suppliers that are vital to the success of your organization to maximize mutual value of those relationships. So in our opinion, supplier relationship management isn't done with the entire supplier group that you have. It's really done with those tier one, most important critical suppliers for you that you see can partner with you in a way to be able to drive change. We do see organizations that have suppliers that maybe they spend hundreds of millions of dollars with, that might not be able to partner with them collaboratively to drive innovation and to drive growth. So making sure that you are picking the right suppliers to be able to partner with, to be able to drive collaboration, drive innovation is important. And one of the questions I always recommend thinking about when choosing your suppliers is, how vital are we to that supplier? So are we one of their top 10 customers, or are we customer 2000? because that will definitely affect whether or not you have access to the A team and the ability to, you know, drive some of these mutual partnerships that are going to need co-investment and co-creation on both sides. Or if they, you spend a lot of money with them and your focus is just, I want to make sure that we get the most out of them with performance management and contract management. So the next slide that I have starts to speak to that. So as we think about the things that make up supplier relationship management, all of these are building blocks to a successful program. You have to have a solid category management strategy. So you have to be buying the right things from the right people. You have to develop a risk management strategy. So once you know what you're buying, making sure that you're protecting yourself in that value, and also thinking about, you know, what are the external risks that might happen. And then contract management as well, making sure that the SLAs that you spent all your time sourcing and negotiating over months are actually tracked during the lifetime of the relationship. We see a lot of organizations sign contracts, put them in an electronic filing drawer, and they don't manage to what they negotiated. And we typically see about a 20 to 50% savings, leakage, or loss of value when people don't do contract management. And I would say this is one of the gaps that we see in a lot of organizations. And then above that is also doing performance management. So above and beyond what you've agreed to for contract management, what are those KPIs? What are those things that you need to focus on for continuous improvement? And then on top of that, relationship management. So you can't just jump into relationship management if you don't currently track SLAs, you don't have a strong performance program with that supplier, you don't have a risk management strategy. So all of these are the building blocks that make a solid supplier management strategy, and also are the things that help you with your supplier relationship management. I can pause there for a question if anything has come in, Kathy.
Okay, yes, we have actually a couple questions. How do you help businesses ensure that their sub-tier 1 suppliers are part of their business continuity planning?
So I would say one of the biggest things that you'll have to do is figure out what type of technology can help you to be able to have that many business continuity plans. But typically what we say is a lot of that can be figured out in risk management. So a lot of what we set up is trying to figure out within risk management, I call it figuring out the right coat to wear. So being able to take a look at a supplier and determine their low, medium, high level of risk, and to be able to break them out into those groups. And you might have a supplier that you don't spend a lot of money with, but is a technology supplier that has access to a lot of personal data. So the risk strategy for that specific supplier might be higher than someone you spend a lot more money with, but might not have the same access to the same information. So going through a risk management questionnaire, and typically when we build those out, we call it a branch and tree. So depending on how either the supplier or your internal business partner completes that questionnaire, helps to give us an idea around what needs to be monitored risk-wise for those sub-tier 1 relationships, and figuring out how do you automate that into a technology system so that you aren't just constantly reading data that is green, looking for something that is flagged as an area of risk. So working with a technology that you can set up, here are the things I want to look for in these suppliers that are sub-tier 1. And I want to make sure that if it's a financial risk or if it's a security risk, these are the correct people that it goes to once we have something flagged in the system. So I think that there is a lot of upfront work to do to get it right into a technology system and automate it. And then I do think it needs to be checked on an annual basis to make sure that nothing has changed with that supplier in either what you're buying from them or what they're providing service-wise, or any sort of internal risk management issues that you need to change and alter. So it is a ever-changing environment with risk management as we see new risks occur, but technology and automation around it, I think, is the fastest way to be able to manage those sub-tier ones.
Okay, we have another question. What are
Okay.
SLAs?
SLAs, service level agreements. So when you're signing a contract, they are what you agree to within the contract. Things like on time and full, deliveries, cost, anything that is negotiated in a contract that you want to be able to measure. So sometimes people have rebates. Sometimes people are given free training that comes with your contract. So any contract point that you've negotiated on that is going to affect how the relationship is run, that's an SLA.
Okay, thank you. And yes, we will be sharing the presentation for everybody.
Yes.
Okay, thank
absolutely.
you. Okay.
Yes. Great. And then Kathy, if you want to launch the next poll, and the next poll is around why is your organization doing SRM? So let us know what are some of the main drivers for this audience on supplier relationship management. We need to build in some of the Jeopardy music for this. Zoom needs to figure that out for us with their polls.
We will next time.
All right, Kathy, hopefully we got a lot of good answers in.
Okay. All right, I'm going to end the poll now and I'll share the results.
Okay. Okay, so the number one is risk management reduction. So, and number two is improving your internal end customer experience. So those are always very high. I definitely feel like after the pandemic, supplier innovation as a focus has definitely dropped. It typically is a higher rated one, but I do think coming out of this, most people are focused on risk management, and hopefully we can get that figured out, get that set up, and eventually get back to focusing on like the continuous improvement. How do we move forward? But I completely agree that we've figured out that the foundation for supplier management is a little bit rocky, and over the next hopefully few months, possibly a year, we get better at risk management. So taking a look at how we structure our research. So we, for the last 12 years, have looked at these 6 pillars of SRM: value, engagement, governance, people, technology, and collaboration. So each year, these are the 6 pillars that we look at. And what we look to see from leaders in SRM is not that they're just good at 1 or 2 of these, but we're really looking for them to be solid across 5 out of the 6 pillars in order to have a successful program. Because you really need to be able to have all 6 of these to be successful. Governance, that's the one that people tend to focus on the most in the beginning. which is what's the process? How do I build out a structure? And one of the things that we recommend is you can have the most amazing, perfect process ever built, the best tools, the best structure. But if you don't have the rest of it, it's really difficult to run a successful program. So one of the things that we recommend is that you start with value and start with defining, why are we doing SRM? Because you are going to be asked that question over and over again as you start to build your program. What is the value? Why should we invest in this? So truly understanding from your business perspective, how is supplier relationship management going to push your organization forward? And once you have that defined, then setting out financial and non-financial goals for the program so that you can measure them on an annual basis. So that's one of the things that people tend to skip over. They just say, yes, we want to do this, but they don't set any goals. And it's difficult to know if you've been successful if you don't have any goals set. And then the next one around engagement. So this was the one area that we see go up and down a lot for organizations, because engagement is all about people. And if you lose a CPO that is passionate about SRM and they move on to another organization, or you lose a key leader for supplier management, or you have a changeover of a lot of people in an organization, you have to start over again with engagement. So making sure that you have the right message to the right people at the right levels, so they understand not only the value, but what's in it for me. Why should I, sitting in this seat, care about supplier relationship management? And then governance is risk management, performance management, contract management, cadence of meetings, RACI of who is going to be doing what, and starting to get really the structure and the framework of your supplier management program. And as you start out, figuring out how to roll that out effectively. Maybe you start with your 2 biggest suppliers, test it out, pilot it, and then roll it out beyond that. But it's really about having a strong process model. People, you cannot do relationship management without people. And one of the #1 things that we see from leaders in SRM is that they train their people on how to do SRM. And it might seem like a no-brainer, but most organizations don't train people on SRM. They just figure, we'll figure it out, and we've probably been doing this well anyways. And SRM, a lot of the skill sets are softer skill sets, or changing the behavior of people and how they interact with their suppliers. And it's training those people not only within procurement, but are dealing with those suppliers on a day-to-day basis and have those relationships. So there's a lot of people typically involved in a strong relationship management program. And then technology. So this is another one that we see go up and down, because what we learn is that as we build our programs and they get more mature, we outgrow the technical capabilities of our current systems or platforms. So as your program advances, you'll probably look and see, okay, does the technology we have today support the SRM program that we're trying to build tomorrow? And what I see a lot of organizations do is they buy software that is specific for the problem that they're facing today, and they don't think about the journey of their SRM program and invest in technology that can take them farther than 2 years. And what ends up happening is we have hundreds of different software systems, all doing different things, not talking to one another, and really not giving us a centralized view of what's happening with a supplier. So technology, when you're thinking about what type of technology you're going to choose, think about how it's going to grow with you and change with you, and not just buy something that fixes contracts or something that just fixes performance. Think about, for the long term, how do you have one technology or one centralized place that people can go for information? And then the last one is around collaboration. So that is collaboration not only with your suppliers, but also with your internal business partners. It asks questions around your ability to innovate, your innovation process, and the collaboration piece is really where you start to get the ROI from your supplier management program. And that's one of the ones that we look at as well. So I'll pause there, and Kathy, if you can launch the third pillar, the third poll question. So which of these pillars is the strongest in your company? So value, engagement, governance, people, technology, and collaboration. So, and then on the next slide, I'll show you some of the averages that we have in each of these 6 pillars. All right, Kathy, hopefully we've got a decent amount of results. Okay, so the winner was value. So that's great, because that's the best place to be able to start. And it looks like we have a tie for last place between technology and engagement. So technology, I could definitely see that. Engagement piece, hopefully that is a reflection of people being busy right now, and it's something that we'll be able to drive up. So I'll close this, and then, so on average, you all are about in the same spot. So value is the #1 pillar for us that we see. That's the pillar that scores the highest with most people that complete the research. So what we are seeing is that organizations see that there is value in supplier management and see that it can be helpful. But some of these other pillars are harder for people to have across the board. As you can see, technology is actually the lowest pillar across everybody that participated. And then we have collaboration and engagement. So those tend to be the 3 lowest, with value, governance, and people tending to be the highest. And so to give you a little bit of background, like I said before, in order to be an SRM leader, you have to have 5 of the 6 pillars in what we call the established zone. So you have to have an established criteria for each of those 6 pillars. And only 10% of people that we surveyed actually fall into the leaders category. To be a fast follower, you have to have 4 of the 6 pillars in established, and then everybody else is in the followers category. So we are still seeing organizations struggle to get this right across all 6 pillars. A lot of them have pockets of excellence here and there within their organization, but having a disciplined, standardized program across the organization, we are still seeing that as a difficulty. And then taking a look at some of the specifics by industry, as you can see, the industry trends sort of all follow the same pattern and are about the same. So there, like I said, there isn't a huge standout within the industries of this industry is doing this the best. As you can see, a lot of them are pretty close on the value piece, with FMCG having the highest on that. And then for engagement, once again, all about in the same spot, but IT and telecoms being the best when it comes to engagement. So they have been able to drive the engagement and being able to have their executives and senior levels, as well as the boots on the ground, excited about SRM. But as you can see, it's not much of a difference between the other industries. When it comes to financial services, they definitely have the most invested in governance as well as people. One of the key things to note about financial services is it is a very risk-heavy supplier management program. So because of all the regulations that they have, and basically what they're looking to do is avoid any sort of fines that they would be getting from the regulators, there is a lot more focus on governance and structure within their programs than the average, as well as because of all that structure, they do have more people and tend to train their people as well. And then also have more invested in technology. But once again, it's very risk-focused technology as opposed to FMCG, where it might be more focused on innovation and collaboration as some of their main drivers for supplier management. And you can see that here for collaboration, IT, technology, and telecoms are the highest scored for that in that space on collaboration. But once again, very similar trends industry by industry, and we're hoping to see some of these change and move, but I would tend to see that probably for 2020, this will be a changing graph as people learn more about what they don't know coming out of this pandemic and figuring out, okay, here are some of the things that we forgot to do on the front end. Let's brush up, let's make our program stronger. So Kathy, I'll pause there to see if there's any questions that have come in.
Yes, there's one more question that came in. Please explain some practical examples with theory.
Practical examples with?
Theory, that's exactly how it's listed. Actual examples with theory.
Theory or dairy?
Theory.
Theory. Actual examples with theory of supplier relationship management?
I assume so. He didn't list it.
Okay. Yeah, so, you know, most of the time, if you think about some of your top suppliers, it's how are you partnering them with to drive change. So I was working to facilitate a supplier relationship workshop. And one of the things, it was a utility company, and one of the things that they saw was that they have probably, like, for every order that they have 3 change orders. So being able to understand, okay, that's a pain point for both sides. So how do we figure out how to change this for both of those organizations so that we can reduce the amount of change orders and increase the time that it takes to be able to get it to market? So what they were able to figure out is, okay, we need to have a better structure and better system around when things are planned and approved. So every single relationship has all of these little nuggets of possible ways that you could drive continuous improvement and find ways to better work together. Launching of new products and services, I see that as one of the easiest ways that people that have been in long-term relationships that are trying to partner with a supplier to maybe launch a new food, launch a new flavor, do something different. I've been a part of those conversations as well, where what's happening in the process to design and to come up with this new food has hit some stumbling blocks. And when you get people together and you have them work together to figure out, okay, what is the pain point? Where is this going wrong? That is what people do for supplier relationship management. So it's finding not only those pain points, to be able to fix things to work more efficiently, but also how do we partner together to create new products and new services along the way. So those are some of the examples that we have around supplier relationship management of, I would say, initiatives that come out of partnering with your suppliers better. Any other questions that came through, Kathy?
Actually, I have one other question here.
Okay.
From the data you noticed one pillar more important than the others. I mean, have you noticed one pillar more important than the others?
I would say no. The key is being strong in as many pillars as possible. I would say when you're first starting out your program, think about this as a linear way to start it. So if you have nothing today, or if you're trying to pivot your program, I would start with value and identifying that and bringing that to life and moving to engagement, governance, people, tech, and collaboration. But none of them is more important than the others. I would say the two data points that we see over and over again from the SRM leaders is first, on the executive engagement level, they have people that are advocates for the program. So a lot of times we come up with these big initiatives that are change management programs, and we get a lot of people that nod their head in the meeting, but as soon as they leave that meeting, they're not going to talk about it to anybody else. So you need advocate level people within the executive team that say this is something that is a strategic change management program for the organization. It's bigger than just procurement. It is how we want to change our business and grow to be more collaborative and on the front lines of change and innovation. So that level of executive engagement, and oftentimes that person is not the CPO, but is maybe the COO or the CFO, and possibly even the CEO. So having as high as possible buy-in for supplier management, that's one of the things that we see making a program successful. The other one is people are trained. So it's always going to be focused on people and people engagement, people being trained. Those seem to be the things that we see from the leaders that they're doing that the other people are not. And one of the reasons that we see from the data relationships that they could be struggling is they don't have that executive level buy-in and they're not training their people.
Thank you. I have another question that just came in. How do you handle suppliers who do not want to be managed and do not want to collaborate?
Yeah. So that to me happens a lot. And typically what we do is we look to say, okay, it can't all be on the supplier. So there's a reason that they don't want to partner with you and that they don't want to be managed. So figuring out what's the root cause of that. Where was the trust broken? And one of the things that we recommend doing is a 360 survey. So it is a one-to-one survey about how the relationship is going. And it asks people internally at your organization as well as at the suppliers to be able to understand where is the gaps that we currently have in this relationship that makes it so adversarial. And we recommend doing that with your tier 1 suppliers. Not every supplier, I would say, needs to have that level of collaboration and engagement. But if it's a tier 2 or tier 3 supplier that doesn't want to be managed, and you still have to work with them, if you've backed yourself into that corner and you can't get them to collaborate, you can't get them to work together, I would say that there's probably something around a get well plan that we would recommend to do. Is figure out, okay, what are those things that they're doing that are causing pain points into the relationship, and how do we measure and monitor them? and instead of having them just go rogue or not listen to the things that we're looking for. But if it gets to a point where a get well plan doesn't work, then you might need to be looking for a new supplier, because you do want suppliers that will collaborate with you. But I would first check your own system internally and make sure that there's nothing that you're doing that is driving those pain points as well. So coming to the table with both the fact that you want to have the relationship change, and here are the things that you're willing to work on, but it has to be a give and take, especially if it's a supplier that you count on, that you know you're not going to get rid of. You have to change the tune from them being managed to partnering with them and trying to figure out what's in it for both of you.
Okay, I got one more question just came in. Can you really have a successful relationship with someone who doesn't want to be managed? If you're taking my money, then there are expectations.
Yeah, I would say, like, if you feel like the relationship is so broken that that you need to switch suppliers, I would say that that's probably what you should do. If you're not able to switch suppliers, I don't know how much that is going to help you by just saying, I pay you, you'll be managed how we say, if you don't have that ability to negotiate them out of your organization. So if it is someone that you have to partner with, I think the day and age of suppliers having more clout, if they are a critical supplier than you, means we have to start changing our attitudes to be more collaborative, even though we might not want to. Otherwise, just get rid of them and find somebody that will collaborate with you on it.
Thank you. I don't have any more questions at this point if you want to continue on.
Great. So this is a quick snapshot of how the different regions are when it comes to supplier management. So as you can see, United States is slightly above on value and engagement, but Europe is still stronger with governance, people, technology, and collaboration. So quick breakdown of what it looks like regionally. It's actually very similar trends that we see when we break it out by industry. So once again, you know, the data points really reflect to say there is no person or there is no industry or region that is knocking this out of the park. There is, once again, mostly pockets of excellence with these 10% that are these SRM leaders that are really driving their programs forward. And there are a mix of people from different industries. And it really is a matter of who are the people that are running the program and developing the program, and how engaged are your people. So that level is what we tend to see as what makes people successful. So 7 key risk themes that have become very topical recently. So these are 7 things that we would recommend if you haven't looked into them already. And hopefully all of you have already been working through some of these to get yourself better prepared. But thinking about, you know, health and availability of supplier workforce. If we do end up having a second wave later this year or next year, being able to understand, okay, what was the impact that we just had on the supplier workforce, and how do we prepare for it going forward? So now that we have some live data of how we've been impacted, let's take that and let's build out plans so that we can be successful. And I think one of the things that we saw is even people that are like outsourcing in India. I was talking to a procurement leader who was saying that they worked really, really fast because they had a lot of their technology support outsourced, but a lot of their suppliers in India, all of the people worked from desktop computers. So in the pandemic, trying to make sure that their supplier workforce had access to laptops was a huge shift. So thinking about all of those little things that could affect not only your physical supply chain, but also your services supply chain, because this had such a big impact on human capital. And financial viability of suppliers. So I would say this is still one that I would keep your eye on diligently as we go further and further along, and supply and demand have been down for certain organizations. Keeping an eye on not only your direct suppliers' financial viability, but how are their suppliers doing as well. So that if you have a lot of suppliers not able to produce the products and services needed that support your suppliers, how is that going to affect your ability to service your customers? So really thinking deeper into the supply chain beyond just your suppliers that are directly supplying you. Because I do think that there could be some more financial issues as it becomes harder and harder with cash flows getting tighter and tighter for a lot of these suppliers. How prepared is your organization? So making sure that your internal teams are set up for success, and making sure that they know now that things might not be in person, how do you make sure if a risk comes up that it gets managed by the right people, sent to the right people, and there is an accountability track around it. So if you don't have a technology that helps you manage organizational risk, highly recommended that you get one, and recommend that you start building out a strategy of accountability of around who needs to take on what when certain risks are flagged. Obviously the social distancing requirement. So how do we build relationships with suppliers, with our internal business partners, when we no longer can have those casual meetings at the water cooler, meeting our suppliers for lunch or for coffee, all those things that help uniquely and authentically build relationships, instead of just jumping on a Zoom call and jumping right into business. How do you take this social distancing requirement and how do you still drive relationships and have meaningful conversations with people that don't necessarily always need to be about work in order to be able to understand who those people are on the other end of the phone. And then also making sure that you understand, how the different locations of where your suppliers are going to be affected. So being able to map that out, and once again, mapping that out not only for your suppliers, but your suppliers' suppliers. So being able to see deeper into your supply chain, understanding what you need to do about the risk of spreading the virus via physical products, and what are the things that you need to do to make sure that that is controlled. And if we have another outbreak as well, how do we make sure that we're better prepared for our supply chains to be able to pivot? And then also the demand shocks. So planning and forecasting is one of the things that we hear from suppliers that companies are the worst at. And if you can imagine right now, if we weren't good at planning and forecasting in supply chain before, now that we've hit the pandemic and we're taking things day by day, a lot of us, how do we build these relationships and build these communication channels with our suppliers so that we can be still effective and be able to make sure we make the most out of the fact that things are a bit up and down right now. But I know we've got about 4 minutes left, so Kathy, I can pause for questions.
Okay, I have one question here. What is one must do for building a SRM quickly but effectively?
Oh, well, I literally have that as some of the last two slides. I don't think we'll get to them today. We'll get to all of it, but I'll make sure that this is sent through. So, the rapid rollout, I would say these are some of the things that we would recommend. So, like the governance and training of those top tier suppliers, doing 360 reports. But I would say the number one thing would be coming up with a joint account plan. So getting on the same page with your supplier on what do we need to accomplish, what are those initiatives, and who's accountable. And most of the time your suppliers have account plans for you. And what we're suggesting is, instead of having a supplier have an account plan and procurement having an account plan, build it together, centralize it, and make sure that you know who's in charge of what. That will be the thing that will help you the quickest, is getting on the same page and having an accountability structure.
Okay, those are all the questions I have at this point.
Okay, great. So I'll skip through to the end so that you guys have it. If you would like to take part in our 2020 survey, it's really easy to remember, but I'll also have Kathy send this out. It's srmsurvey.com. This is our 12th year of doing the research. If you do take part of the research, what we do is we provide you a benchmark back of how you are doing versus the 6 pillars. And we typically include not only a regional breakdown of how you do versus the US, but also by your industry as well, so that you can see how you do versus your peers. So that's how we thank everybody that participates in the research, and how we're able to get such great companies to participate year after year, is by providing that free benchmark. So hopefully some of you all will take the benchmark, and then otherwise, obviously check us out on online as well. And then my email is on there, as well as my LinkedIn. And I'd be happy to add any of you to my network. We post a lot about supplier management on a daily basis, and interesting articles and real life situations of how people are doing supplier relationship management well. So with that, Kathy, I can end the presentation unless there's anything else you'd like to add.
We got a comment. Great job. Thank you for presenting today. At this time, I'd like to thank Molly for her very, very informative program. And yes, we will be sending out all the slides, and everybody will get a copy of the recording as well. And with that, I would like to just mention briefly that our webinars for next week, because everybody now knows we are running quite a few of them. We have one on June 3rd. It will be best practices for creating a marketing spend category roadmap. And on June 4th, it's going to be part 2 of our 3-part series, perspectives for procurement function. And we're going to be focusing on resilience on that particular one. So with that, I'd like to thank Molly, thank for all of our attendees for attending us, for joining us today. And, as I said, we will be sending out the information to you with the survey link, and also with Molly's website as well. Thank you very much, and everybody have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.